Pesach because Baruch Hashem, we're coming on to it mighty fast. And do you realize that the years somehow, although they appear to be the same size, somehow appear to you to be much faster. You turn around and it's another Pesach.
I guess that means you have more fun when you're older because...
Now, I learned Hilchot Pesach in the Hilchot Chayonim the last year, and you two were not here. Talking about...
I have learned it on my own.
And you certainly did learn it on your own last night.
In fact, he knows every word of this backwards by time.
Page 284. And would you, Moshe, would you read it? We're talking now, Bitul Chometz, that you Chometz, there are several Isurim involved. I want to tell you, for a background, that there are at least 3 mitzvahs aseh involved and 4 mitzvahs los aseh involved in Pesach. And according to the Rambam, there are 5 mitzvahs los aseh involved in the Pesach. And that is, the mitzvah aseh is one is to eat matzah on the night of the first night of Pesach. That's the mitzvah aseh d'oraisa. And also, another mitzvah aseh d'oraisa is Saper Tzias Mitzrayim that night. So talking about going out from Egypt is a mitzvah aseh d'oraisa. And so therefore, a person should talk a lot about the Tzias Mitzrayim on the Lila, 2 nights of Pesach and Goliath. And the third mitzvah aseh d'oraisa is to go and remove the chometz and the leavening on the day before Pesach. All right. And there are 4 mitzvahs. One is you shouldn't eat chometz all 7 days of Pesach. You should not eat anything that's mixed up with chometz all 7 days of Pesach. And third, the chometz should not be seen all 7 days of Pesach that belongs to you. And fourth, it should not be found chometz all 7 days of Pesach that belongs to you.
What about
the Rambam adds an additional one that even on additional law, according to the Rambam, that's not everybody holds that way, but the Rambam holds that way, an additional law that you're not even supposed to eat chometz erev Pesach from katzos. You're not supposed to, according to the Rambam.
What about eating more?
Not according to the...
Because more, wouldn't that seem to be a positive commandment in Torah? I disagree with you. I have sources.
Is he...
How come he doesn't include eating more? You're supposed to eat more. It's a mitzvah.
I'll look it up.
Eat more. Right?
I'll look it up.
You don't eat it for nothing. That's not the way. That's the way. This seems to be like a mitzvah to me.
Yeah.
Should I read 4?
All right, read 4. Now, I want to call your attention to something. And Friedlander, one day, not today, one day we will learn an inyan that concerns Steve Dollar in Klal Kufyut Test. That's page 284. I know I'd like to... Now, here is a concept that is alluded to in the Hilchot Pesach Chayonim that we would be required to learn a Gemara to understand the ramifications of this concept. And believe netter, we will in fact do that. Right now I want you to hear the stock according to Chayonim, and then you will remember that, and when we do learn it...
This is Mrs. Asay Midrabanan.
I'm right?
Saying not the rice, Drabanan. Eat more.
Gets a little sticky after a while.
Rob arguing with Shmuel.
You'll learn a Gemara about the concept. A thing that's in your heart is not a thing. In other words, a thing that you think. Say, for instance, you make an agreement with somebody, and you don't specify that this is subject to some condition. The question is whether or not, if something happens that you didn't anticipate is going to happen, whether or not you can back out of your deal.
It depends. Is it a written agreement?
You consummate, like for instance, the Gemara will tell us about a case. The person, he's got, in the ancient times, everybody had land. Not like nowadays, a lot of people live in the cities all their lives. They have land. A person would never dream of selling the family farm unless you're going to leave the locality permanently. So he has intention to go Eretz Israel, but he doesn't sell it to the person he's selling it. And he sells it. Then he finds out, for some reason, he can't go there. He wants to back down on the deal. So now, talk about this concept. The Boring Shibboleth Ein Dvorim, and whether or not, if he didn't make it a condition, specifically express condition, whether or not I can back out of it. Now, the Gemara there will say, the Dvorim Shabbat, and if you don't specify the condition, you can't back out of your deal, because the other person can't read your mind, what if anything you're doing. And say, no, that's why I wanted to give you this. So we'll believe that, we'll learn the Gemara. I just want you to know, you can sometimes learn the Gemara, and then you have to go learn the Gemara, because otherwise you won't understand why.
Okay. Should I go on?
Yeah, Dalit.
Okay, Mina Torah, according to the Torah, it's enough just by nullifying the chometz in your heart, by saying it, or even thinking it. Because you came, certainly, in most of the Varum in Olam, if he wants to destroy it physically from the world, if he wants to destroy his chometz, burn it.
And so one of these two methods should be sufficient.
So what's wrong with Uva'ach? Okay. I'm in truth. Don't tell me this.
Yeah, let me. Wait just a second.
Sure.
Here. Were you here last night? Right, then all three of you were not here last night. I had a different group of Talmidim last night. And we're learning about a concept. The Gemara tells us of Dvorim Shabalev Ein Dvorim. A person that thinks something in his heart, and he doesn't reveal it to the person he's making a transaction with, a sale or something, this is not considered a condition that can defeat the sale. In other words, if he thinks that, for instance, the Gemara will tell us a case, a person thinking in the old times everybody had a farm. That's the way they worked. So a person wouldn't leave the country if he not sell his farm. So what if a person wants to go to the land of Israel? So he's got a farm outside the land of Israel, and he wants to move to Israel, so he's going to sell his farm. Now, he doesn't tell anybody he wants to move to Israel. He doesn't tell anybody any of his plans. All he does is make a sale with another Jew, and later on something happens that he can't. He found out for some reason that he didn't anticipate. Now he wants to back down on the sale. Question, can he back down? So the Gemara tells a thing that's in a person's heart, in other words, it doesn't reveal it to somebody else, is Ein Dvorim. It's not considered as something that you can consider thing to stop this transaction, because you didn't reveal it at the time that you were selling on this condition, on condition that you would go to a land. You understand? How we're going to learn along.
So it sticks or...
The sale is you can't back it. It doesn't make any difference. He didn't reveal it to the purchaser.
There was something wrong with the property.
That's not talking about that. We're talking about a case where there's nothing wrong with the property, and the only thing that's wrong is that he finds out that he no longer has to. He can no longer go to the land of Israel. Now we're looking at Dalit.
Put it all in writing. According to the Torah, it's enough when you have chometz that you should nullify it in your mind. The culture can certainly most environmental. If you want to physically remove it from the world, he's allowed to. They hand. And then one of these, and with either one of these ways, sagi would be enough. Achmiru, the Chazal or rabbis of blessed memory have made it more stricter. The lo sachi beged echad mehan. It's not enough to do it with either one of those. Elo b'shneihem davka. Only by those two ways.
No, you got to do both of those ways.
What did I say?
Don't use the word only. Oh, but you'll find out later you have to do something else.
Davka means only.
Elo b'shneihem davka.
With only those two ways.
Only with two ways, not with just one. All right.
Okay. Because they were afraid that since that the getting rid of it with your mind is dependent on the machshava of people, on their thoughts, on people's thoughts.
If you want to say, I don't consider this chometz worth anything, it's like dust of the world. It is worthless to me. I don't want it. I don't want to. But that depends on your thoughts. Now, whether or not your thoughts are sincere or not depends on how much you have. What if you owned a whole granary filled with chometz, worth many thousands of dollars?
You may not be too inclined to get rid of all that chometz with your mind. You may have to think about it.
Well, that's
it may be hard in his eyes, bad for a person in his eyes, that if he has a lot of chametz in many different places, that he should make it all hefker.
Ownerless.
To make it ownerless.
No, that's not easy. If a person's got nothing and he says, I don't own anything, and he says, I don't own anything, that's pretty hard for him to say. You understand? It's not true. He doesn't mean it. I relinquish ownership. He doesn't mean it. And since he doesn't mean it, there's a question whether or not his nullification in his mind is sufficient.
There's no question at all.
No, even if he's a religious Jew and he really doesn't want to have the chametz in his, he's not doing it with a full heart. You know,
But he's just saying it.
No.
The option with these, and also with his mouth, Yomar.
says it with his mouth. We suspect.
Even if he thinks in his mind that it should, even if he says that it should be nullified, it should be ownerless, and it should be thought of like the dust of the earth, it should be considered, ownerless. Okay. His mind isn't actually that way.
We are saying this is a shonara that was written in the early 1800s, The Lives of a Man, by a great Rome. Part of one of the commentaries of the Torah, yes. It's a commentary that now, a person that says this, I give up ownership of all the chametz in my granary. Even if he says the word, we as the rabbis, he cannot possibly be sincere. So therefore it wouldn't take, this nullification wouldn't take. And if the nullification wouldn't take, he would be violating negative commandments of the Torah. You should not have anything that is seen in your possession or anything that can be found in your possession.
Can he sell it to a goy?
That he has to do that indeed.
Brother?
Yes.
Suppose it's his property, but is it okay if he makes it hefker while it's still on his property?
After when it's your property, you can't make it hefker. You cannot make it ownerless if you don't own it.
Okay.
You don't
Let
own
me
it.
put it this way. How about if he locks it up in a warehouse and he says everything covers that warehouse is hefker?
Nobody else can get in.
And someone owning all this.
Absolutely.
But
You
you can take it right back.
Who takes it? The boy's got an option. And if he wants that,
Aren't we coming in knowing he's not going to take it back?
but he doesn't have.
Just because it's never happened doesn't mean
Just
it
because
won't.
it doesn't ordinarily happen doesn't mean
But it's virtually...
not virtually at all. If he wants to, and all of a sudden,
The circumstances, they're not weighed in such a way that he can really say, yes, I'll buy them all.
I'm telling you. So I go to the other Rabbanim, and we go to a man as a non-Jew, and we make an agreement with the non, not only for ourselves, but for all the people we represent. Sometimes we represent a good portion of Chicago Jewry, because there are about 15 rabbis that go together with me. And we use every single type of a transaction that's mentioned in the Talmud. That we can possibly, I always sell it the day before Pesach. And therefore, every year, same thing. And so therefore, when we do sell it, we do everything we can to sell it. And we make, without question, a legal binding contract that he can go and take effect if he desires to exercise the option. Is it our fault that after Pesach he decides not to go through with the deal? We're not twisting his arm. All he has to do is come up with the money to pay for all that. He has put a down deposit before Pesach, and he'll go and make the final decision whether to go through with it after Pesach. If he decides that he wants to go through it and comes up with the money, then we must go through with the deal too. So far, nobody's come up with that type of money, because it's an awful lot of money. If you're going to buy the chametz of a half of the Chicago Jewish population, it's a lot of money. He didn't mention that. He said all.
Can you do that?
If we made such an agreement, we didn't make such an agreement. We made an agreement that everybody hears, all or nothing. That's the agreement we gave. Again, it's the Devarim Shebelev. It's a thing that's in our hearts. If we wanted to just make a partial that we, huh? No, it wasn't. It's specified in all of it. I read it.
Sorry.
Finish this.
Okay.
Wait, he says, We estimate as the Bezdin that he doesn't, it's not sincere if he has thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. And he really is not with a complete heart, complete intelligence, complete desire doing this. So therefore we have to have other safeguards to make sure he does not violate the Torah negative commandments of not being seen in your ownership or not being found in your ownership. So what do we do? So it tells you.
You just did. Not sincere, and since he didn't...
and since from his house.
He could be...
Can we put it in a cabinet?
Yes, but that won't
house?
help. If you didn't sell it,
it can
won't
be
help.
found in the house. He basically didn't take it out from his house, and from his jurisdiction.
There are some people that want to make sure they throw away all the chametz, throw away all the pots and everything, then you don't have to sell it. But there you've got problem.
Then you got to buy it.
But yeah, so as a practical matter, it's not going to work out.
But is that the way it's intended?
To
throw everything out?
No. It's intended that we shouldn't own it.
Well, since he's going to use it all year, because we're in Shishka, that they said the rabbis have said that since it's in his jurisdiction the whole year round, perhaps he might he'll forget comments on Pesach. If he just puts it out from his mind, but it's still in his house, he may come to eat it on Pesach. Have established Shafa Bishim Bagi. That's not enough, even though he had already nullified it with his mind. It's not. But he has to search and to destroy it to burn it from physically. Or he can sell it to a goy.
Like offer like dust to the earth, and we make it hefker ownerless, and we also sell it to a goy. I burn after I go participate in the Chirit Chomet with the Rabbonim. I take some of my chometz that I had saved from the night before on it. And I burn it, physically burn it. And I say a blessing on it that everything is nullified. All right, you can stop at this point. Sure. I'm going to read the beginning of the Orach HaShofan on Siman Chof Tes, that's 429, Dini Chodesh Nisan, the laws of the month of Nisan, of all Chesipim. And here you'll find 8 paragraphs. Because of its greatness, of a thing, therefore, Alpha-P, even though Shashona morning Tishrei, even though the months and the years are numbered from Tishrei, regardless of that, Kadoshim morning is Nisan. The months are counted from Nisan. In Emar, Chodesh Hazeh, this month, Lochem to be Rosh Kadoshim, the beginning of the months. It should be the beginning of you for the months of the year. Does anybody know where this is found? Yes, that's for sure.
Can we just read it?
It's found.
It's found. This is the
Either Shemos, Ma'ikra, or Babibur.
This is period Yud days in Shmos. In Shmos, the beginning of period Yud days. This is, if you'll recall, the first Rashi that the Torah should have begun with this pasuk, because this is the first mitzvah, Korban Pesach, given to the Klal Yisrael. Tomer, that is to say, Roshim is the beginning of all the months. It remains the beginning, the first one of the months of the year. So, what is its greatness? Shel Chodesh Nisan, of the month of Nisan. And that month occurred going out from Egypt. Here was revealed for the whole world to know that the name may be blessed, was supervising his creatures. Well, Siosov and his signs, and his wonderment that he did perform. And there you saw that God paid back to the wicked one, according to his wickedness, Mishalim told, and he paid good. It's a classic example of the justice of God, where God magnificently punishes those that are wicked in accordance with the way they were wicked, and gives good to those that love him. Moshe, like he hit Paro and Israel, and he redeemed Israel. Well, Nibchar Chodesh Hazeh. Why was this month selected? Nation. Why? You have all the months in the year, you can select perhaps another month to do it. Of course, the Gemara says in the beginning of the Sota that the God chose a month when it wouldn't be too hot and too cold. But by the same token, you could choose in the fall, you could have the same kind of arrangement, too hot and too cold. So now the question is, why this particular month? Yes.
It's because...
Well, not necessarily, but we're going to see now. See, this is where we're going to discuss something that perhaps none of you ever heard of before. So that's why I'm learning it with you, because you think that you've learned, you've lived a long time, all the reasons why Pesach, and all of a sudden, Baruch Hashem, if you keep on learning, you'll find new things that you wouldn't even believe that even has any relevance to Pesach. But lo and behold, it's giving a reason.
Isn't it because it's the beginning of the agricultural year?
Could be that, but then again, you can have the beginning of winter wheat could be a crop. Yes, obviously. But now let's see what the reason is given. The Aruch HaShulchan gives Sif Beis. Why was this month selected? Among other reasons, of course. Because the Egyptians used to worship the lamb. There are 12 signs of the zodiac. This is the beginning of the zodiac, if you will. Mazel Tolo, and the mazel, the sign of the zodiac for Nisan is the lamb. Know ahead of time what it's going to be.
You mean the lamb?
Shabbos Chodesh Nisan, this mazel, this is prevalent in the month, and Paro Melech Mitzrayim, Somach Al Kosel. Paro was depending on his strength and on his sign of the zodiac, which was the Tolo, which was the lamb, which was they were observing. They were worshiping the lamb, so they figured
so God,
when it comes the time of the lamb, their idol would have the greatest potential to protect them against.
This was God's judgment against this.
Yeah. God, on purpose, he fixed that the final punishment should be in Chodesh Nisan, because he wanted to show that Avodah Zarah is completely powerless against him, and there is no shaykhs whatsoever. So, did you ever hear this? Never did. Therefore, even though, now we have to go back to the 10th plagues, in the Makkah of Borad, where the hail came, and Nishbar Libo, Zona, there was a breaking of his heart, that he had gone astray, and he had come out to the statement, he said the statement, Hashem HaTzadik, God is the righteous one, I and my people are the wicked one. He made that statement. So you would think at this point, he now sees the light, and now he'll do tshuva, he'll let the Jewish people go, and God doesn't have to go and punish them any further, and everything will be fine, and he don't have to die or anything like that. So, he just said it with words, but it wasn't sincere. Regardless of that, afterwards, the Makas Arba, and the time when the plague of the locusts fell upon them, Herim Rosh, he lifted up his head again, he's now become a Balgaida again. He drove them away. He's already becoming the true nature of the person, the Rishon. He drove them away, Koshech, and the time and the plague of darkness, and he was still very adamant in everything that he was doing. Al Tosif Ra'os Ponai, don't see my face again, but the day you see my face, you will die. That you picked the right time. Just with preciseness, unbelievable. And he makes it come to a crescendo right at the time when the Rishonim would think that they are going to be, without question, winning out. That all time, the reason is Mipnei Oz Korban Yomei Nisan, because now was coming the time of days of Nisan, and Paro and his advisors were ecstatic. Now we're going to finally win out because we are coming under our mazel, and we're going to win out without question.
But then they misinterpret. How do they interpret the first
But
10?
Zolo, and he depended on his mazel, on his sign of the zodiac, which was the Tola, which was the sheep, and he was worshiping the sheep. Over Chodesh of this month, the Zeresh Omar Chodesh Baruch Moshe, and this is what the rabbinic Chodesh Hazeh, this month, Chodoshim, the beginning of the month, Kolomar, Chodesh Hazeh, this month, that Paro was waiting for this month. He was waiting. This is the time he wanted it. Remember, just like Haman, he was waiting for Adam. So Paro Melech Mitzrayim is also waiting for this month. Yelachem, it will meet you. Rosh will be the head of all the months. Shevazeh Yitzborar, because this way it will be clarified. He ain't mamish b'mazolos. There is no substance at all in all this astrological science. And God, He is the God. Vashamayim Mimao, the heavens above, our earth bitucha, and on the earth below, Eno, there's no one else. Israel, and Israel came Amsgulaso, Israel, they are His precious people. Little thing, that is first of the months of the year. Second paragraph. It's beautiful. You never learned this before in your life, did you? Never. Right? There is something beautiful also. I don't know if we'll finish it today, but nothing is ever finished in one day. There's something beautiful in the regular Shulchan Aruch, the symbolism when we sit at the Passover table, the Agoda, and each thing, what's the symbolism? Beautiful. And the Friedlander will continue learning it. Hopefully we'll get it before we... Because of the greatness of this month. So also the tabernacle was set up in Rosh Chodesh in the second year. Then when the Rabbi set up the tabernacle. See, Kudi, we just learned it. Kudi, we just had it last week. And I see, and then the princes of the tribe, they each brought the similar present. Mishkan, yes? Thank you. Good to know. Chanukah Hamizbeach for the dedication of the altar. He says it right here. Yom Tov. And every Nasi, every prince, made his day a Yom Tov. And also there will be the same thing in the future to come. Osi Pesach, the bonus Benisan. In the future, the Beis Hamikdash will be built in Nisan. The third Tanya,
when was the second? When was the first one?
The first one was built by Shlomo HaMelech 480 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim. 480 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim. We learned out in the beginning of the Gemara, the very Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. You can bring me the Gemara Rosh Hashanah.
So that's also in Nisan, that the first...
Wait, well, we'll see. I think but the third Beis Hamikdash will be built in Nisan. And because Tanya, we're learning the Bryce, Perik Basra, the Sifta Sofri, in the last chapter in the tractate of Sofri. Omer Shaman said there. Right. Thank you very much there. Chapter 4. Here it says here, on Beis Omid Beis, my Rabbi Olav Shalom, Rabbi, he used to say, you know, the trouble is with Yeshiva Bochrim, they don't quote from Tanakh, they quote from the Gemara. And I guess I commend you. So I quote, when I get a posik, I think of the Gemara rather than thinking of the Gemara. So I'm guilty of that particular thing. But at least I can find it. Laugh at that. He b'shmonim shana, it was an 80th year of Abba Meir Shana, and he's in the 4th year of the reign of Shlomo HaMelech. Chodesh Ziv. It was the month of Ziv. Chodesh Hasheni Lemloch Shlomo Al Yisrael.
It was the second?
Wait, Chodesh Ziv, who Ear. According to Rashi, it's Ear. Ear, because it says here, as we say later on, Nisan Rish.
Wait, why was it an ear? What was the significance of dedicating the temple and the first one in ear?
Wait, later on it says that Nisan who Chodesh Ziv. Olam, the fathers of the world were born, Shehem. All right, so there's a dispute there. Our teachers say that Chodesh Ziv is Nisan. Rashi says that Chodesh Ziv is ear. All right, don't argue. What? All right, you got to dispute. All right, now we're talking about the second base. The second base of Mikdash was dedicated, was started to be built. The first base of Mikdash was the Churban base, Churban Abayis. The first base of Mikdash was by Nebuchadnezzar in the year 586 before the Common Era. And Yirmiyahu and other Nevi'im prophesied that in 70 years there would be another base of Mikdash. Approximately 552 before the Common Era, they started to rebuild the temple with the Cyrus the Great, the proclamation.
When was the first?
The first Churban was 586. You don't know the month of Churban of Bayis?
The first offering. The base of Mikdash.
To see that the second one was finally dedicated in 516 before the Common Era. Exactly 70 years of destruction of the old one. I don't know. You can look it up. I'll try to find it for Friedlander. See if I can find when it was in fact dedicated, if it does matter. But all right, let's go further here. Therefore, ein omrim tachnun. We don't say tachnun. Kol yemei Nisan, all the days of Nisan. Ein nistanin ad she'over Nisan, and we don't usually fast until after Nisan's over. Levad, except the firstborn. Shemistanin be'erev Pesach, that they fast on erev Pesach. That's if they don't hear a siyum. If you hear a siyum of Shas, one of the Gemaras ended up, and that's what they usually have in the shuls. They have somebody finish up a Gemara. At that point, you can whatever is necessary.
What about getting married?
You want to get married?
Usually get married on the day in this Yemeni.
Usually, we permit when you have Keterim. There's different minhagim on Sphira, so there's different minhagim about Sphira. After there are some that permit you to get married all the way up to Rish Chedesh Iyar. You can get married after the Yom Tov, and then you can get married on the 18th day of Iyar, which is Lag BaOmer. And then, since there are those that only count up to the 18th, only have the semi-availance until Lag BaOmer, so you can get married even afterwards too, because there are different minhagim. One minhag is that you don't cut your hair or anything like that between Chedesh Iyar, except with Lag BaOmer, and then all the way up to the 3 days before. And another minhag, the one I follow, is it starts from the second day of Pesach until Lag BaOmer. But either way, any place you have a kula, anybody permits you not to be a mourning period, you can get married those times.
Well, until all of you can get married?
Yeah, no problem. So you got somebody in mind? I'd like to know. I'll officiate. It won't cost you any money to get married. I'll even go and lay out the money for the wedding license. It's getting very expensive now. I think it's $45. It's not as easy. We got in under the wire, which was cheaper at that time. But anyway, all right, now. I want to emphasize certain things. I'll skip a portion of it because I want to get there. For instance, according to Shabbos HaGodol, we call it the Big Shabbos. Mipnei Hanes HaGodol, because of the great miracle, Shenasa Bo, that was made on it. This is Simon Sof Lamed 430, next Shabbos. Not this Shabbos, the following Shabbos. It's Pesach Kodesh. And then the Shabbos after that is the first day of the Pesach.
After the first Shabbos.
After Shabbos whatever it is. Nasa Pesach Mitzrayim. There they made the Korban Pesach. It was taken from the 10th day of the month of Nisan that they started this day. The Gemara tells us that the Yetzias Mitzrayim occurred on Thursday. So therefore the day before, the Shabbos before was the 10th day of the month of Nisan. As we know, the first day of Pesach is the 15th day of the month. Was the 10th day of the month of the month. And each Jew took a lamb for his Paschal lamb, not each group of Jews that could eat it. And after all, who can eat a whole lamb by himself? So you would need a group of Jews, a lamb or a goat. Koshro, the karke bitoso, and he would tie it up at the posts of his bed along a Mitzri, and the Egyptians would ask them, Mazeh, why are you tying up a lamb at the post of your bed? Thibault commanded the shachto that they would have to. The lamb was the worshipped as an idol by Mitzrayim also the Torah, and the Egyptians worshipped of the lamb. Shineam kohos, it's like they're blunting their teeth. The shosku, and the miracle was that they kept their mouth shut, and some Jewish people, and killed them. And also the Jews let them know that God in the future would also kill their firstborn. Now, nobody wants to die, so the firstborn of the Pharaoh would finally let the Jews go. I mean, after all, the Messer is out for stubbornness. Who wants them to be stubborn? Also, Bikuri Mitzrayim. So all the firstborn of Egyptians went. Also, in Pharaoh, Avoseam, Melchama. And they had a civil war in Egypt when Pharaoh and their fathers, and the fathers, the older generation, didn't want to give in because they figured we're coming to our Mazel Dikamat and we're going to win out. And the Bechorim, they saw that they're going to die. Forget it. You and your big time thing. So they wouldn't listen. So people don't listen. And you have stubborn on both sides, so you have a war. So they fought each other. And this is what it says when we have in the Agora, Lamaka Mitzrayim B'choreah, to smite the Egyptians with their firstborn. In other words, the smiting of the Egyptians, or the firstborn, there was first smiting of the Egyptians killing the firstborn. And then those of them, then God follows up.
Why particularly the first? Why? What's the significance of the first?
The Melech Mitzrayim. My firstborn is Yisrael. And he said, no, you won't let him go, and your firstborn will die.
What's the significance of Yisrael being the firstborn?
Israel is the most chashiv of all the nations in the earth. Israel is the one that, in the earlier generation, the firstborn was the one of the family that used to offer the karbonos to God. And since Israel took it upon themselves to become a people of God and to serve God, they were deserving of protection of God.
Was this firstborn, now that before the Mabul, was that a tradition then?
It was a tradition even after the Mabul. And it was a tradition. Remember when Yaakov Avinu walked the right of the firstborn from Esav, Russia? That same situation occurred. Esav, yes, so that's a confirmation of the sale of Mechira. But in addition to that, the fact is the firstborn used to offer the sacrifices to God. And only a person that can offer proper sacrifices to God. Al Shem Osar Nes, for this miracle, Korin also Shabbos Agodol, called it the Great Shabbos. The Shemitah, perhaps you will say, even if this is the case, well, how we lay close to Shabbos, you don't have to go and hang it on to Shabbos before Pesach. El the Yud, just say on the 10th day of Nisan is a holiday, the great day of the 10th of Nisan. Why do you have to say the 10th of Nisan? Agodol.
Always fall.
It does always fall on
The
Shabbos.
Thursday wouldn't be going out all the time. It's at various different days.
I understand. That's true. We don't always have Pesach starting on Thursday. So then we ask the question. Perhaps you might ask, why can't we just say the 10th of Nisan Hagodol? What do you have to say Shabbos Hagodol? And that's that 5 days before the holiday, that's the third. So now we're giving an answer to that. Yesh Lever, you can answer. So Miriam, on the 10th day of the 40th year, Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aaron, died on the 10th day of Nisan.
Which wasn't the Shabbos.
So therefore didn't want to hang on a day rather than so Yom Simcha, to make it a day of rejoicing. Or how can we rejoice when Miriam was such a great tzaddikus that by her schus that they had water, sufficient water for the entire Jewish nation while wandering in the desert for 40 years. That's how great her piety was. Those, and also the Esther Chodesh, also on the 10th day, another miracle occurred. What's that? Olo Mina Yarden. The time of Yeshua, later on, they went up from the Jordan on the 10th day of Nisan. God split the Jordan River so that they could cross during the spring flood on the dry riverbed from one side of the Jordan to the other side. Another miracle occurred. Well, Over, and I might think to say that the remembrance of the 10th day is because of the miracle of the Yarden. How do I know it's a miracle of tying? But the miracle of the Yarden is also a miracle. We all Shabbos. Therefore, we fixed it on the Shabbos, as the train did not occur on Shabbos. And so we can definitely pinpoint which miracle we're talking about. All right, now I just want to repeat to you what we learned before, in sum total, and Friedlander. Next time we learn Hilchos Pesach, either will be Thursday, we'll continue. I will learn you in the regular Shulchan Aruch certain symbolic things and the order of the Haggadah. Thursday, or if you don't do Thursday, it'll be Sunday. Just want to repeat this. Pesach, I mentioned this before. This is Sof Lamed Aleph, chapter 431 in the section on Hilchos Pesach. It says like this: Pesach, in the generalization of Pesach, there are Gimel Mitzvahs Aseh, 3 positive commandments, Torah commandments, and 4 negative Torah commandments. That is, altogether 7 Torah commandments. There are 613 commandments of the Torah. There are 7 that you can fulfill on Pesach. That's a Rambam. According to the Rambam, there are 5 negative commandments rather than just 4 to fulfill. So we're coming on to it mighty fast. And do you realize that the years somehow, although they appear to be the same size, somehow appear to you to be much faster. You turn around and it's another Pesach.
I guess that means you have more fun when you're older because,
I learned Hilchos Pesach in the Hilchos Chaim the last year, and you two were not here present. And it's talking about...
I may have learned it on my own.
And you may have learned it on your own.
In fact, I did learn it on my own.
And you certainly did learn it on your last night.
in fact, he knows every word.
Page 284. And would you, Moshe, since
You know the
I don't want to forget, would you read it and translate it? We're talking now Bitul Chometz, that you Chometz, there are several. I want to tell you for a background. Aruch HaShulchan states that there are at least 3 mitzvahs aseh involved in and 4 mitzvahs los aseh involved in Pesach. And according to the Rambam, there are 5 mitzvahs los aseh involved in the Pesach. And that is, the mitzvahs aseh is one is to eat matzah on the night of the first night of Pesach. That's the mitzvah aseh. And also that night, so talking about going up, and so therefore a person should talk a lot about the Yetziat Mitzrayim on the Lila of 2 nights of Pesach in Goliath. And the third mitzvah aseh, the Araisa, is to go and remove the chametz and the leavening on the day before Pesach. All right. And then one is you shouldn't eat chametz all 7 days of Pesach. You should not eat anything that's mixed up with chametz all 7 days of Pesach. And third, the chametz should not be seen all 7 days of Pesach that belongs to you. And fourth, it should not be found all 7 days of Pesach that belongs to you. The Rambam adds an additional one, that even an additional law, according to the Rambam, that's not everybody holds that way, but an additional law, that you're not even supposed to eat chametz erev Pesach from Chatzos. You're not, according to the Rambam. Right.
I'm sure. What about eating more?
Not according to the...
It says you're supposed to eat it on matzah more. Wouldn't that seem to be a positive commandment in Torah?
Mentioned it.
I disagree with you. I have sources. How come he doesn't include eating more? You're supposed to eat more. It's a mitzvah.
All right, we'll look into it. I'll look it up.
Eat more. Right?
I'll look it up.
You don't eat it for nothing. There's got to be a mitzvah.
Yeah.
No, it says. How come that's not the way? This is the way.
Yeah.
Should I read 4?
All right, read 4. Now, I want to call your attention to something. And Friedlander, one day, not today, one day we will learn an inyan that concerns deep dollar. In Klal, Kufyud, page 284. L, are you with us? Now, here is a concept that is alluded to in Hilchot Pesach Hayodim, that we would be required to learn a Gemara to understand the ramifications of this concept. And believe netter, we will in fact do that.
Okay.
Right now I want you to hear the stock according to Hayodim, and then you will remember that, and when we do learn it, it's a Gemara in Kedushin.
See that? You're right. Here you go. Feet more.
I'm right?
Okay. And it says that this is feet more.
And the Aruch HaShulchan gets a little sticky after a while, yes?
Rav arguing with Shmuel.
You can learn a Gemara about a thing that's in your heart is not a thing. In other words, a thing that you think. Say, for instance, you make an agreement with somebody, and you don't specify that this is subject to some condition. The question is whether or not, if something happens that you didn't anticipate was going to happen, whether or not you can back out of your deal.
It depends.
Is it a written agreement?
You consummate, like for instance, the Gemara will tell us about a case, the person decided he's going to go to Eretz Israel. So naturally, he's got, in the ancient times, everybody had land. Not like nowadays, a lot of people live in the cities all their lives. They had land. So as a result, a person would never dream of selling the family farm unless you're going to leave the locality permanently. So he has an intention to go to Eretz Israel, but he doesn't tell it to the person he's selling it. And he sells it. Then he finds out, for some reason, he can't go there. He wants to back down on the deal. So now, we talk about this concept.
Why would they know?
Devorim Shibboleth, ain't Devorim, and whether or not, if he didn't make it a condition, a specifically expressed condition, whether or not he can back out of it. Now, the Gemara there will say, Devorim Shibboleth, ain't Devorim. The halacha is that if you don't specify the condition, you can't back out of your deal because the other person can't read your mind. What if anything you're doing? Now, you'll read this. Yes.
This is the only case where you could, I mean, this is the case where you can't do it.
That's why I wanted to give you this concept.
Yeah.
Well, learn the Gemara. I just want you to know you can sometimes learn the Gemara and then you have to go learn the Gemara because otherwise you won't understand why.
Stop going.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I go on?
Yeah, Dalit.
Okay, Mina Torah, according to the Torah, it's enough just by nullifying the chometz in your heart, by saying it, or even thinking it. Because you can, certainly, in most of the Varum in Olam, if he wants to destroy it physically from the world, if he wants to destroy his chometz, burn it, Echad means.
And so, therefore,
And
one of
the
these two
ways-
methods should be sufficient.
So what's wrong with Uva'ach?
No. Okay. Yeah, let's wait just a second.
Sure.
First, stop it for a second. You were here last night? Right, then all three of you were not here last night. I had a different group of Talmidim last night. We're learning about a concept. The Gemara tells us, Devorim Shibboleth and Devorim. A person that thinks something in his heart, and he doesn't reveal it to the person he's making a transaction with, a sale or something, this is not considered a condition that it can defeat the sale. In other words, if he thinks that, for instance, the Gemara will tell us a case, a person thinking in the old times everybody had a farm. That's the way they worked. So a person wouldn't leave the country if not selling and leave the country. So what if a person wants to go to the land of Israel? So he's got a farm outside the land of Israel, and he wants to move to Israel, so he's going to sell his farm. He doesn't tell anybody he wants to move to Israel. He doesn't tell anybody any of his plans. All he does is make a sale with another Jew, sell his farm. And later on, something happens that he can't. He pops out for some reason that he didn't anticipate. Now he wants to back down on the sale. Question, can he back down? So the Gemara tells a thing that's in a person's heart, in other words, it doesn't reveal it to somebody else, it's ain't Devorim. It's not considered as something that you can consider a thing to stop this transaction, because you didn't reveal it at the time that you were selling on this condition, on condition that you would go to a land of Israel. You understand? We're going to learn along.
So this intention was for bad.
It doesn't make any difference. He didn't reveal it to the purchaser.
There was something wrong with the property.
That's not talking about that. We're talking about a case where there's nothing wrong with the property. And the only thing that's wrong is that he finds out that he no longer has to, he can no longer go to the land of Israel. Now we're looking at Dalit.
According to the Torah, it's enough when you have chametz that you should nullify it in your mind. The culture can certainly most environmental. If you want to physically remove it from the world, he's allowed to mehen. And in one of these, and with either one of these ways, sagi would be enough. Achmiru, the Chazal or rabbis of blessed memory have made it more stricter. The lo sagi and it's not enough to do it with either one of those. Elo b'shnehem davka. Only by those two ways.
No, you got to do both of those ways.
What did I say?
You say only those ways. Don't use the word only.
Oh.
Because you'll find out later you have to do something else.
Davka means only.
Shnayim davka. Only with two ways, not with just one. All right.
Okay. The because they were afraid that since the bittul, the getting rid of it with your mind, is dependent on the machshava of people, on their thoughts, on people's thoughts.
If you want to consider this chametz worth anything, it's like dust of the world. It is worthless to me. I don't want it. I don't want to own it. But that depends on your thoughts. Now, whether or not your thoughts are sincere or not depends on how much you have. What if you owned a whole granary filled with chametz, worth many thousands of dollars?
You may not be too inclined to get rid of all that chametz with your mind. You may have to think about it.
Well,